Good evening, everyone. It is Dr. Tay with yet another episode of Late Night Latte. Thank you so much for tuning in. Um, our guest just texted me and told me he's almost ready. So I'm sure he's getting fly and tuning it up because he's a recording artist. So maybe we can get some, maybe we can get some bars. I know it's been a while since we've actually had a late night latte. We've had some major technical difficulties for the last 2 weeks, and I'm looking to reschedule those two interviews. And they may or may not be on IGTV. I will definitely keep all of you updated. Those of you who tune in faithfully every week definitely want to make sure that you are able to listen to all of the awesome things that the guests from 2 weeks prior have to say. So we are going to wait a while for, not too long, for our guest, who is Andre Byrd. I met Andre maybe 2 years ago, and we worked on a project together, and it was really, really awesome time, and it's been awesome getting to know him and also learning about his story, which you're going to hear about in greater detail shortly. So in the meantime, please share. I know he has an awesome story to tell, and the theme for this month, as I've been saying, is melanated mental health. This is Minority Mental Health Month. So tonight we are going to be talking about depression and suicide prevention, two things that Andre Byrd is really passionate about advocating for. So share if you feel like someone needs to hear what you think will be said tonight, or if you just enjoy Late Night Latte, please share it. Share it. It is hot, as y'all can see. That's why I keep trying to keep my eyebrows intact. Yeah. So we're going to wait for Andre to tune in. Hope that everyone is well. So those of you who are tuned in, you can give me a little emoji wave and let me know that you're there so I can shout you out. And I'll be sharing as well. Those of you who are tuning in, hey. If you're first-time viewers, welcome to Late Night Latte with Dr. Tay. If you are one of the viewers who tune in every Tuesday, welcome back. We have another great show for you this evening. Just waiting for our guest. And the toddlers are asleep. Praise God. So they probably won't be making an appearance tonight. And for those of you who are tuned in and waiting for our guest to arrive, in the meantime, in between time, make sure that you follow That's Dr. Tay on Instagram, as well as Facebook and Twitter. And also follow our guest, who is Official Andre Byrd, BYRD. Official Andre Byrd. That's his Instagram handle. Make sure that you follow him on Instagram and Facebook as well, and keep up with all of the awesome things that he has going on, which we're also going to learn more about later. Text him, see what he's doing. should be coming on soon, very soon. I see lots of you are popping in. Drop a line, let me know that you're here so I can say hey. Hey, hey, bro. Oh boy. Can I bring you on screen? This cannot happen the third week in a row. Okay. Invite, bro. And it shall go through in the name of Jesus. Yes.
Greetings.
Greetings. You don't understand. The last 2 weeks, I've had like major technical difficulties. So this is exciting for me right now. Bro.
What's up?
How are you?
I am well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
How are you
Everyone,
doing?
I am well. Thank you for asking. You know, people don't usually ask the therapist how the therapist is doing.
Right.
But everyone, those of you who are tuned in to Late Night Latte, I would like to introduce to some and present to others. That's what they say in church, right? Mr. Andre Byrd, one of my brothers. We met about 2 years ago. It was about 2 years ago.
That's about right.
He was working on this awesome project called The Ugly Beautiful Experience, which we will hear more about later. And we really connected over our passion for advocating for adequate mental health, etc. And just continue to grow from there. So I'm really, really excited to have him on the show tonight because he has an awesome testimony, an awesome story, and just a lot of wonderful things that he has to share with the masses. So, welcome to Late Night Latte with Dr. Tay.
Good to be here.
So we'll get started. So I've already told you how I told the masses how we met, but tell us a little bit about who Andre Byrd is.
Certainly. So, I am 30 plus. I am. I used to have anxieties about that. I'm good now.
Okay.
And maybe we'll have some time to talk about that too. But I'm a multi-hyphenate. I do a lot. Anything that's creative that I can get my hands on and do it efficiently. I want to be able to do it because I really feel like art really is the extension of who we are as people. I tell people this all the time. Not that I know God wooed me to Him through music. It's a really romantic story because I didn't really. I talk a lot about helping people find their identity, finding a tribe. People just want to know that they belong somewhere, that they fit in.
Right.
There is a place for the other. There's a place for the marginalized. There is a place for the people who don't particularly fit the type A of anything. And I do believe that the other is the new it. And once we realize our power, it's gonna be something beautiful to see, and it's already beginning to unfold. So when you ask who Andre Byrd is, I hate to say the things that I do. Because it spans way more across than just the skill sets and so on and so forth.
Right, of course.
If you were to take the singing away from me, the songwriting, the production, if you were to take the acting away from me, at my core, I'm just a person who has sought to master, compassion and empathy for people, and I love to see people happy. So I'm a healer. That's who Andre Byrd is.
Awesome. And you definitely heal through all of those vehicles that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
I'm going to say ugly beautiful again, just reminding you to talk about ugly beautiful, because people are probably like, what's that? Oh, you'll find out. So I know that you have I won't call it an alter ego, but it's funny, you put your head down and that was like a perfect angle of the hat. That's Andre Byrd's logo. And what is that, bro?
This is a
It's
phoenix.
a phoenix. So you told us
Yeah.
who Andre Byrd is. Who's
Yes.
Phoenix?
Phoenix is the Phoenix is the overconfident, hyper version of who Andre Byrd is,
Ah.
and I've always kind of been very passionate about how artists choose to express themselves, and
Mhm.
the Bible says we can't be too heavenly minded that we're of no earthly good, and I was
Right.
just kind of tuned into a lot of the stuff that Beyonce was saying, and about her alter egos and different artists. I mean, she wasn't the first; she probably won't be the last. I'm one of those that's a part of that conversation. Whatever you need to do. I think as children, we were at a place where we were like our imagination was fostered, and as we
Hmm.
got older, we lost that. You know what I mean? So whatever you have to do to get to that place. Like when I get on stage, people don't understand. I am a nervous wreck, and I learned quickly that if I knew who I was, that it'd be easy for me to convey a message. And so, me being a Harry Potter fan, which is a little bit dichotomous because I'm a Christian, don't send me hate mail. I just love fantasy. I love how J.K. Rowling like got me to read and was like just really sparked my imagination, my thinking.
This is a
And
judgment-free zone.
hey, I love it. I love it. She brought to life just the meaning of the phoenix. I think Albus Dumbledore, who was Harry Potter's mentor, was talking about the phoenix and how the phoenix could hold 3 times its weight while in flight. That
That's a word.
on In that a word? Okay, so let me say this to y'all real quick. I got to tell y'all the definition of my name, right? So my name is Andre Wayne Byrd, right? Andre is French. It means to be strong or courageous. Wayne means a wagon bearer. It's German. And Byrd, spelled Byrd, means to be bird-like. And so, in essence, when I was trying to find an image to represent who I was, the phoenix automatically stuck out to me because of my name. Someone who is strong and courageous, who carries the loads of others while in flight. Andre Wayne Byrd. And so when I looked at the
Somebody
phoenix, I
get the
was like,
sheep.
wait. Wait a minute, God. Like, first of all, why would you allow my mother to name me this? And number two, the fact that this was the correlation between my own personal life and this mythological creature,
Hmm.
there was just an epiphany. The light bulb went off. So this is what we're going to use to give people identity and allow them to be a part of we call it the Phoenician tribe. So it's going to be incredible. I'm so excited.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. For those of you who just tuned in, hey Kendra. Those of you who are on private accounts or whatever, and I can't see you, just drop us a wave so we can shout you out, and we know that you're here. So Andre has told us who Andre Byrd is, the artist. We also know who Phoenix is and where that came from. Now, I want to dive in. You know that the topic for the month is melanated mental health. This is National Minority Mental Health Month. So I just want to talk to you a little bit about that. I think it's really important for Black and Brown people to not only have mental health awareness tailored to them because we perceive things differently and we need different things and we go through different things. But I think it's also important that we hear stories from people who look like us. We hear stories from people who
Sure.
have experienced similar things, things that we can, people we feel identify with what we're going through. But first,
Absolutely.
I just want your take on the whole concept of minority mental health. Like, what, like, do you think there's a purpose for having Minority Mental Health Month?
Absolutely. I call myself I'm not really the activist that's as involved as some of my friends are. I have a different theology on activism. I believe that you can be an activist wherever you are. So whether
Okay.
you're holding a picket sign or whatever you're doing, using your gifts, specifically the arts, because we as people of color are moved by music, movement, everything that's creative is what moves us. And so I chose to use this platform, you know what I mean, music, acting, as my form of activism.
Right.
I believe that, you know, words attached with sound rides on waves, and that it has the ability to be able to strike us in our hearts. When you talk about the importance of brown and black people having tailor-made health awareness programs and initiatives, it has been a topic that nauseates me. And I used to be the guy who used to put up all the hashtags and repost everything that was going on with the black community, the brown community. But it seems like there's a hashtag every other day or every other week,
Yep.
and
Justice for.
it's
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right,
Yep.
right. So my prayer has always been, and not for selfish reasons, but as you said, to be that image. You know, to be not particularly a poster child, because I think that comes with a lot of responsibility, but to allow me to be a hashtag while I'm alive.
Mm.
And I watch. I forget the name of the guy, but he's an older gentleman. He had like a beard. I don't know if that gives you a clear understanding. Maybe his name.
That
He's a
could be Andre
doctor.
Byrd. No.
He just recently passed away. He was an activist as well, and he was talking
The
to us
chef,
about the work. Huh?
the chef, Anthony
Actually,
Bourdain.
what's he? No, he's a few. I can't, the name will come to me.
Mhm.
He was an activist,
Okay.
and I believe the interviewer asked him a question about the word hope, and he got irate, and he
Mm.
said, "You don't see men of power talking about the word hope." If someone says that you're getting ready to do something or you would like to do something, when you include the word hope in there, you automatically tell all of the trillions of cells in your body that you don't truly believe at the core that you have the ability to be able to do it.
Wow.
Um, so it's powerful, like you said, to have people of color, especially men.
Mm.
I walked into the social work arena, being told by teachers and professors that this was a career path that was inundated with a lot of presence of a representation of women at the forefront of the conversation. And I've had several conversations with people in life where they talk about how women are more so the emotional creatures and men are logical. I think that's nonsense. I think we all have the ability to be logical. I
Absolutely.
think we all have the ability to be emotional.
Mm-hmm.
It takes men to show the example that other men, you can be
Mm.
human, you can be emotional, and still be a man. So redefining what masculinity is very important to me, and being able to create opportunities for people to have access to certain conversations is important, because it's an age-old conversation, right? People of color have been limited to their ability to be able to arrive at their destiny because we have been held back from access to certain resources in schooling, whatever, monies, whatever. And so you got somebody like me who says, I'm not trying to get a mansion off this. I want to be able to give you an opportunity to come to a safe space and express
Mm-hmm.
that you're feeling, which is what the premise of the Ugly Beautiful conference was. You know what I mean? So it's absolutely important. It's
Yeah.
absolutely important, especially in New York. You know, I'll say this one last thing, and then hand it over to you. We kind of it's very cutthroat in New York. We almost have this "I'm gonna get you before you get me" mentality.
Mm.
It's a lot of and rightfully so, as Black people. The gentrification is something that's not particularly easy for us to connect with, because they're coming into neighborhoods that are predominantly that look a certain way, and they're not treating us with respect. It's weird. I was born and raised in Stamford, Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a school that was predominantly Caucasian, and so I had the ability to be able to have connections with Caucasian people. So to learn how to coexist with them and have there be some kind of harmony, racism is taught. So as a child, I had white friends, and it wasn't a problem for me. As I got older, I realized that the racism that was introverted is now becoming so much more overt. So black people, people of color, are unapologetically people of color. And we want people to know. People who tend to be loud or bold are people who have struggled with not being heard or felt like they've not been heard before. So how do we channel that energy into something that's much more productive? How do we show them that you don't have to be raunchy or violent and still get the message across and still be powerful? Right. So yeah, it's absolutely important.
And you said a mouthful, but the last thing you said was about stereotypes, and I think stereotypes are some of the reasons why Black and brown people do not seek out help for mental illness, or it doesn't even have to be a diagnosable mental illness, just psychological distress. Because of those stereotypes, we feel like, oh, well, we're supposed to be strong, so we're supposed to handle it, and we don't need help. What happens in the family stays in the family, that type of stuff. So I think stereotypes, that's one thing that's huge, and it's a huge barrier that we need to be, candid in discussing. So when we first started, you talked about how you didn't want to talk about your skill set, and that's expensive. But in addition to a lot of the endeavors you have going on, you're, songwriter, you are, did you say producer, you're recording artist, you got into modeling recently, Phoenix Captured. Follow Phoenix Captured. You'll see some photos. But in addition to all of that, I noticed, like, in following you on social media, that you have become a really big advocate, not just about maintaining adequate mental health, but suicide prevention specifically. Tell me a little bit more about how you, became passionate about speaking on that issue.
So I'm part of a minority of a minority of a minority. People who are believers, especially now that the conversation is that Christianity is the white man's religion, right? So it's something that was forced upon us in slavery, and that somehow we aren't supposed to serve. Right, that's exactly what they. And that's woke for everybody. More power to you. Whatever you have to do to make yourself feel more powerful, that's cool. I've experienced God in a personal way. And whether or not Jesus was forced on my people or not, I've come into a relationship with him, and it's been a little bit of a tumultuous relationship because I didn't know who I was, and here I am being told that who I am is being defined by a being that I cannot see or feel tangibly. And I come from a Caribbean background. Both of my parents are Jamaican. If you have any Caribbean parentage, especially the men, if your father was present, you know that Caribbean down with his son and embrace him and give him a kiss on the forehead. Or they kind of teach their sons that manhood and strength means to be detached and divorced from hypersensitivity, and that's dangerous because our men are now acting out because their anger has been funneled and concentrated in one area that has not afforded them the opportunity to express. So I say all that to say, being a person of color, being a first generation Jamaican American, and a person who, like I said, is a believer, there was a disconnect. My father kind of parented me from the pulpit, and that's hard. You know what I mean? Especially when you're used to hearing or overhearing conversations about you, or people coming into revelations about you that you did yourself. I learned a lot about myself through what I heard other people saying about me, and it was pretty heavy. And it wasn't until now, recently, late 20s, early 30s, that I realized that there are a lot of things that we've trivialized. There are a lot of things that we've over spiritualized, that we've not named as trauma and have been. And so because I was wired differently, And everybody thought that this cookie cutter way of raising a Jamaican American believer was one way. I felt unheard, and I felt like the only way to get
Mm,
people's attention was to end my life. So June 3rd, 2014, and it's so much more layered than that. I don't even know that we have the time to go into detail. But June 3rd, 2014, and as the more that I talk about it, is the more that I have the ability to be able to release it. So I talk about it as often as possible. I never tire of talking about it because in every gathering that I get into, there's at least one or two people who say, "Yeah, your music is cool. We love you. You have a great voice, but your testimony, bro." I
mhm.
absolutely needed that because I'm going through that right now. I can't even tell you how many times I've had to stop after I've done singing, not to sign anything or take pictures with people, but to pray with them in that moment to say, help. I'm going through something, and that's when I realized that I was on to something. When after the attempt had failed, and I came back to myself, there was an epiphany. There was a light bulb that went on, and whereas I prioritized making other people comfortable in my life, that changed drastically for me. I put me first, um, and so the challenge now is how to balance that, how to not be prideful, but at the same
Mm,
time making sure that my being is always of such where I am. How are you feeling? Are you comfortable in this moment? Is this person making you comfortable? Use your voice, Andre. You know what I mean? And
right.
and also most one of the heaviest revelations that I've had to come into is that there's very little that I can do to change people's opinions about me. I was always the
Absolutely.
kind of guy to be kumbaya and cry about why people don't like me for me, or get upset when people make a judgment call about me, not knowing me at all. And I'm like, bro, you have no control of that. There's nothing that you'll be able to do. They've made up their mind. Move on. Accept those who are for you and put your energy into that, and kind of ignore, everybody else. They'll either come around and they won't. But it doesn't take away from, my journey for, betterment. So to answer your question, my own personal account with suicide, the actual attempt, because the thought
Hmm.
processes have always been there. The self mutilation and the cutting has always been there.
Mm,
How I was going to do it was just something that I was trying to figure out for the longest. And the scary thing about my situation is that I did I in hindsight I really didn't talk about it with anyone. When my
mm,
mom heard about it afterwards. I used to want to spare them because I was scared that people would think that they weren't good parents.
mm,
But at the end of the day, we don't always do things right. We don't always do things right. That doesn't take away the fact that my parents were amazing parents.
right.
However, when I turned one, it was the first time they had a 1-year-old. When I turned 15, it was the first time they had a 15-year-old. When I turned 21, it was the first time that they had ever dealt with a biological being at 21. And so those changes was something that they have to get used to as well. I think they're getting a little bit more comfortable with my story now, but I want to be at the helm of this conversation because other people need to know that there is life after suicidal thoughts and attempts.
Right. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that with us. And I think that it's extremely um it's admirable and inspirational that you are so willing, and you might not have always been willing, but that you're so willing
Mm,
to share the story so that other people can get free. I'm definitely inspired by it because you
mm,
are a believer, but you also
mm-hmm.
boldly not you boldly share your testimony, and that is not
Mhm.
something that we often see, because as believers we're expected to have this face, and everything is always let's shout over it. And it's like
Mhm.
mental health or mental illness or psychological distress is like taboo. Like,
Ah,
okay, well, we have, sister so and so, her son talks to himself. Well, we're just going to keep him in the back. We're not
right.
going to talk. We're not going to have a real conversation about the real things that people deal with. Um, And
So
in
good.
recent years, I think that people are more open to it. Like there are churches that are, that have mental health ministries or have counselors on staff or whatever. But, it's a process. But I think that people like you who are willing to have that conversation, tell your own story, but in the same breath still say that you believe God. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
admirable because there are a lot of people who are
Thank you.
in the pews and they're suffering.
Oh
And I'm
my
sure, like
God.
you're also a youth pastor, right? I don't know if you
Yeah,
wanted me to
I was
out.
going to talk.
Well, I already outed you, but
No, you good.
and I'm sure, with all of these stories we hear about bullying and cyberbullying and youth attempting suicide and successfully completing it, like I'm sure that you see a lot of this. So people like you are
Whew.
necessary not only in
Thank you.
society but in the kingdom, because people need to know
Absolutely.
that you can
Yeah.
still believe God and still, go through and have an
Absolutely.
adverse reaction to a traumatizing event. Like people need to for sharing your testimony and being transparent so that other people can get to a place where you are.
Thank you.
So
It's interesting that you would say that because actually on Sunday,
go
is
ahead.
that yeah. So on Sunday, interestingly enough, God has been healing the relationship between myself and my father,
Mm,
through me sharing the testimony. It's still a little awkward. We love each other as grown men. I understand his necessity in my life, and the emotional connection. We're working on it. It's still a little bit awkward to be in a room by myself with my father. If I can just be honest and say that, just because the little boy in me, it was like, yo, bro, like we really didn't have a lot of opportunities because of ministry, which I resented for a
mm,
long time. Um,
right.
to really share, and so from the pulpit, which is his way of saying I love you. Um, Interestingly enough, and I accept it as such. And I don't
Mm,
try to make him be what he particularly doesn't have the wherewithal to be. He's doing the best that he knows how, and so just that's the first step.
right.
And when you said that, I got chills because as I was talking, as I talk a little bit more about my testimony, as a matter of fact, there was a lady who came to our church who just recently got saved and gave her life to the Lord, who was introduced to the church at an
Mm-hmm.
evening where we were having prayer service. And she brought a picture of her son. And she was just despondent. She wasn't really worshiping. She was just seated. And people were hovering over her and just kind of had their arm around her. And my father introduced her from the pulpit and said, "We want her to come now." And then they called for me. So when I know when they call for me, outside of me being a youth pastor, something in my spirit said this might have something to do with depression, just because of her posture,
Mm,
but I didn't know what it was. And so my father instructed us to take one of the sheets that we had in our church and place his picture in the
mm-hmm.
middle of the sheet, which was an amazingly powerful spiritual moment. And I was asked to anoint the sheet. And then the story came out that her son was presently in a facility because he attempted to end his life. And so in that moment,
Mm,
because I had already been sharing my testimony, there was an empowerment that came over me that happens, as we know, in the spirit world, and I began to talk to her as a human to another human, and I said, I know what it's
mm,
like to want to end your life. I know what it's like to make the attempt and fail. I know what it's like to feel disappointed when the attempts doesn't work. Like, why am I still here? I'm supposed to be out of here. You know what I mean? And to be able to talk to her directly on that level, and the fact that there has been just an influx. I can't talk about the church across the board. I know that this is happening, but in my church, where there are 60 young people, I'd say in the last 5 months, at the beginning of this year, the young people have come to me directly, about 5 or 6 of them, and said, I feel like ending my life.
mm,
And it always moves me. It always moves me. You're talking about 13-year-olds, you're talking about 10-year-olds, you're talking about 15-year-olds who are struggling with
right.
self identity, who are struggling with what the idea of living righteously in a world where that's inundated with a different kind of culture. When they leave church from throughout the week, they have to they want friends, and they feel like the only way to have friends is to be a part of a culture that we know is a little bit is not really, doesn't lend itself to, you know, positivity. So, you know, like you said, it's great to see that the kingdom is now yielding to the idea of talking about it. It was stigmatized for a long time, and I'm seeing now that people are ready and willing and prepared to talk about it and not feel judged. You know, they just want to know that when they share their testimony, that they're going to feel embraced. Yeah.
Right. And I think that's so important that people know that there's a safe space. Oftentimes we don't share, we don't disclose unless we know for certain that it's safe. And if
Right.
we are in a situation where we feel, and I'm not saying, I know this is melanated mental health and we're talking about Black and brown people, but I say just we as people, if we
Yeah.
open ourselves up and allow ourselves to be vulnerable, and then we find
Mm-hmm.
after the fact that that alleged safe space was not safe at all, then that's re-traumatizing.
Mm-hmm.
That can re-injure, re-traumatize, make you go back into your deep, deep, dark hole of depression. So I think it's
Right.
really important, especially as the church, and there's so many other institutions as well that really would benefit from being mindful of creating this safe space. Because if we
Yeah.
don't create a safe space, then people aren't going to come forward.
No.
You know, like church is a safe space. You know, if you are what's something that like we embrace and like it's okay baby, you know, besides, you know, getting on the mic and you can't really sing, like what are some things that we embrace and people are okay with? Like um if you have a child out of wedlock, let's say, you know,
Right. 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 Right.
not that, you know, leadership will say, oh, it's all right baby, but you know, it's something that we can pray you through, and you know, people aren't, you know,
Right.
don't necessarily feel um marginalized when they share things like
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
because people, just like people see church as a safe space to share things like that, I think that we as believers need to create that safe space for people who are
Absolutely.
experiencing psychological distress, because there are a whole lot of people
Absolutely.
experiencing psychological distress and either they don't know it, and if they know it, all the folk at church don't know it either. You know, they might say,
Absolutely.
oh
And
well, he's just he's just different, he's just special, or you know,
right.
she's just difficult. Well, do you know that she experienced a trauma when she was 15 years old that she never processed, and she was told that it was her fault, and every time that she has a conversation with other people, she's told that it's her fault and she's re-traumatized. Like,
Woo-hoo.
you might be mean too, like you know what I mean?
That's so
So,
good. And you know what it is? With this generation that precedes us, it means having to admit that you didn't do some things right. And that spirit of pride and entitlement that
mm,
says, I'm not gonna admit that I was wrong. You're just rebellious. No, I am a direct reflection of who you've made me to be. So you have to
mhm.
take accountability for what you've done wrong. And that's where the healing is going to begin. I think we've really been, I have a passion naturally for young people because I felt like I was robbed of the opportunity to mature healthily in the church, being a pastor and a minister's child. So I always reach back, especially for ministers' children, but children in general, people who are, you know, children of the ministry. Your family is involved in ministry. I always keep an eye on what it is that they're dealing with. But we should also reach forward or back to the other generation to say,
Mhm.
you know, yeah, you did it wrong. You can make up for lost time, you know. And
Right,
I really
right.
do believe once the cover is ripped off of that shroud of just pride and me saying I did everything right, my child is just rebellious, or it ain't nothing but the devil, was when we'll really begin
Hmm.
to really understand that. Oh wait, hold on, ma, you were abused too. You know, I can't tell you how many Tyler Perry movies I've seen where the revelation comes out that the mom or someone, the matriarch of the family, also experienced some
Hmm.
kind, some kind of traumatic activity. And I really believe, unfortunately, we've been perpetuating this trauma. Like you said, in church, we just it's unfortunate, but it's the absolute truth. Like you said, we just shout over it. You know what I mean? We dance over it. I was watching the This Is America Childish Gambino video. Fascinating piece of art, by the way. And I watch it frequently. See if
Absolutely.
there's any other things. Anything else that I
Right.
missed. And the fact
Because
that they
it's like the Bible. You read it, you can read it or watch it 10 different times and get 10 different revelations. Yep. I showed it in class
so when those
and
kids were
yeah.
dancing, yeah, yeah. So the fact that those kids were dancing to kind of cover their pain, I'm wondering to myself if that's just our way, or if there's something about that that is intrinsically wrong, that we don't stop for a minute to think, that we just shake it off and move on and wait for another opportunity to come across where we feel like we have to prove our strength in another way and then be at the mercy of, crooked law enforcement. You know what I mean? Let's not dance. This is that's America. You know what I mean? They expect us to just continue to move on while things are wrong with us. But what does God really
Right.
want us to do? And one of my favorite characters in the Bible is David. And I stopped being apologetic about what I share on social media, because I realized that it was me not feeling like I had the opportunity to share and not feel further judged than I had already made myself feel. At this point, it's necessary for me to share when something is going wrong. And people are always reaching out saying, Byrd, I'm praying for you. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your courage. And that's, I know we're probably going to talk about the song that's coming out in a little bit too, but that
Absolutely.
Deliver Me is like the central focus of that song is to create an opportunity for people to feel like when they cry out for help, that there is a listening ear. And naturally, when people hear the song, they're going to think, oh, he's asking for God to deliver him. When in actuality, there are a lot of people who have the solution around us. Simply, a friend of mine, he's 27, and he and I had just conversed probably 2 weeks ago, that his mother's also Jamaican, and she's a helicopter, and she almost, their relationship is tumultuous. He feels as though she doesn't understand him. She doesn't understand it. She babies him. She's not learning how to let go. It's traumatizing for her for whatever reason. Maybe she has felt like
Right.
is her parentage, whatever. But he put on Facebook today or Instagram today that his mother just apologized for anything that she said that made him feel insecure. And what a
Wow.
break moment. And I'm like, bro, you now have to be at the helm of the conversation.
Now you can
Because there's
shout
so
on that.
many.
You can shout on that.
Oh my God. I can't wait to call him after this and say, bro, what do you mean? Because he had spoken to me about it, and I know that he was feeling a way about the fact that he just wanted his mother to understand. My mom too. You know what I mean? It took 30 years for my parents to get that singing is not a hobby, that it is something that I am moved to do. And every time I try to move away from it and go into a conventional career path, that it calls back to me, that it's what I do well. And my aspirations are not to be a millionaire and be on MTV Cribs, should that ever come back. But it moves me. I'm most passionate when I'm doing the thing that moves me. And a lot of parents are going to be responsible for not training up the child in the way that he or she should go. That actually means stopping for a second and learning your child. Learn to be disruptive in class, but he or she is actually a creative. How do I speak to that and not say, get in your books and get off Facebook because you're supposed to be a doctor and get me out of the hood? No, unfortunately, that's not their responsibility. So yeah.
Wow. Like, wow, that's so important. You mentioned Childish Gambino. Like, there's so many
Yeah,
elements that you can pick apart. And, even, you know, their mental health issues that are brought up as well, like dancing over it and, just kind of sweeping things under the rug. And the analogy that I use with my clients is that when you continue to sweep things under the rug, eventually it's going to become a pile of dust and
absolutely.
dirt, and then you can't ignore it anymore. It's
And then
just
your
going to
footing is
be a whole bunch
unbalanced.
of dirt with a rug draped over it.
I love
So,
it.
that's why we have, I believe that's why we have, Minority Mental Health Month. I believe that's why,
Absolutely.
we, people like you and I, who are professionals and have experienced it, need to really talk about it. Um, and that
Hmm.
brings me to another question. It's actually a question I kind of gave you an idea of where I wanted to go. And I didn't mention the spirituality piece, but, clearly we've touched on that. What are some
Yeah.
things that you think are um, unique to the groups that you identify with? So you talked about being identifying as Jamaican American, being a male, being a believer. What do you think are things that are unique or psychological stressors that are unique to those different
Perception.
aspects of you?
Perception. I think I heard you
Mm,
talk briefly about it in another one of your latte chats, and you were saying the perception is
yes, you
very
watch.
very important.
Yes.
Yeah. I can only talk from experience. I went to England. We did England, Paris, and Scotland with my family.
Mhm.
We're just blessed to have family that's been blessed, and they afforded us the opportunity to be able to not just go to the UK but to visit some other places. It was my coming of age kind of situation. I just turned 30, and my parents thought, what better gift than to give you the opportunity to be able to see the world and travel. So
Mhm.
kudos to them for really
Yes.
uh, honing on that and giving me my first opportunity. I wouldn't have had it any other way. But I realized when I was there, and it really frustrated me, to be honest with you, that I was having a depressive episode, if that's what you would call it.
Mm.
And just the residue
Mhm.
of, I'm very sensitive to energy. And I used to be told that, in essence, that I was crazy. People used to label me as over analytical. Oh no, that's not really what's going
Mm.
on. You're just thinking about it too hard. And me just kind of being numb to hearing that almost made me again kind of retreat within myself. And so I shared it with my sister because I had a little bit of an outburst while in another country, because people of color have been taught to be feared. And I'm 6'2", 290 business pounds. And so what I realized is that people have a people's perception of who I am
Right.
is something that I've had to deal with for a very very long time, and I just felt the eyes on me. And so when I shared it with my sister after the outburst,
Mm.
she herself became frustrated because in her mind she was like, "I know you and I love my brother, but we're in another country. Is just enjoy yourself." And her intentions were absolutely pure. But when she got back home and had an opportunity to talk to someone in her life who was actually another brown skinned, tall brother, he shared with her. She thought that his response was going to be, "Oh my God, your brother really is over analytical," but he said something to her that made
Mm.
her come back to me and apologize. He said, "You've never been a black man before, so I
Wow.
don't expect you to understand how he feels,
Mm.
how his what his and so the emasculation of men, um, the what do I want to say here? Um, just a misrepresentation of what masculinity is supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
is what I identify with, especially being Jamaican American. Um, uh, like you said, the over spiritualization of things that are absolutely important for us to talk about, which are things that are actually traumatizing for us, are things that I relate to and I speak to quite often. And I mean, it doesn't get any more it doesn't get any heavier than that. Just
Mm.
being a Jamaican American and being a believer. So uniquely,
Right.
when we can get to those places and tell people, I apologize for the fact that what you've been feeling has been kind of trivialized. What your experience is absolutely legitimate. You are not losing your mind.
Right.
But here are the tools. but to get through that. And I'm learning every day. I wouldn't say that I've perfected anything. I came to the realization again that I need to go back to therapy because there are some things that
Mm.
I thought that I had mastered, but in actuality, I have not. And I've been telling people that it's okay to have a therapist and have Jesus in your life too, because at the end of the day, the reason why Jesus set up the institution of families and communities is because he wanted us to learn the power of interpersonal skills. There are things that I can learn from a child
Mm.
that I lost because I became an
Right.
adult, and there are things that I can learn from the elderly that I may not know because I've not reached there. Um, the
Right.
fine line, the fine line is actually getting to a place where we can honestly say, I know exactly how you feel. You know what I mean? And this kind of get over it conversation that we've been having as a church, as a body of believers. Sorry to over spiritualize the conversation, but is is is
No, you're
is
good.
is erroneous. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to say the least. We can't
Hmm.
just get over it. You know what I mean, some
Right.
people are not wired that way. You know,
Right.
I share I share an analogy often, and it's one of my favorite analogies. I don't know how it came to me, but it just did. That there is a baby that runs into a room. She's like a little young baby, and she runs into a room, an unfamiliar territory, just kind of having fun as children do, and she stubs her toe on the edge of the bed. For her, this is the worst pain that she's ever felt in her life before.
Right.
She has no gauge of a worse pain, a pain that feels worse than this. And so to her, it's almost as if it's the end of the world. I can't foresee me being able to get past this place of feeling utter pain. So my visceral reaction is to just cry out.
Hmm.
Mom runs into the room to see what the baby is crying about. But in her rushing, while she may kind of be familiar with the territory, she rushes into the room as well to get to the child, but stubs her toe on the edge of the bed as well. So now not only does she has to cater to the child's pain, but she
Mm.
has to figure out why she's feeling pain as well. Grandma runs into the room. Grandma's response is vital. Grandma can't say to the baby, get over it. And I think the church has played the mean grandma in saying, your mom's not crying. Why are you crying? Stop being
Wow.
sensitive. Grandma's response has to be, I get why this feels like the worst pain for you, period. Mind you, grandma didn't stub her toe under the bed because she's familiar with the territory. So she knew how to maneuver and get into the room without hurting herself, but to talk and speak to the pain. So she gets to bless both generations while at the same time not making them feel less than because they reacted to pain in a different way. And what might be minute for you might be the end of the world for somebody else. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Understanding love languages, understanding how we perceive as Black people is absolutely important. There are Black men who feel less than and are traumatized by the fact that they feel like they will never be able to live up to Jay-Z's representation of what a man is, or Six
Hmm.
Nine's representation of a man is, or what the Future's representation of a man is. I'm not that. I don't play basketball. I'm not into music like that. I love science. Does that make me less of a man? Well, I've been told that it does.
Mm.
So now I reject myself because now not only is my manhood being questioned, but there's questions about my sexuality where I've never had these thoughts about before. Now you're introducing these thoughts into my life, and I'm thinking, well, I guess I'm not. I have no value because there was nobody around me to affirm me for who I am, for who I am. So yeah, man, there's a lot of important conversations that we need to have over the next couple of years, and I'm happy to be at the forefront
Mm.
of a lot of it.
Awesome. Awesome. And
Yeah.
perception, like I never thought of it that way, but perception is
Hmm.
huge. And you started off the conversation talking about how you learned a lot about yourself based on how people perceive you. And sometimes we think we're learning
Absolutely.
about ourselves when people's perceptions of us aren't accurate. So while you think
That's
you're
it.
learning about yourself, you're learning based on something that's not really an accurate representation of who you are. So then it's like you get in this process of having to relearn yourself and
Yeah.
rewire everything that you've been told and everything that
That's
you thought was mirroring when really wasn't who you are. That's a late night
that's
latte
powerful,
course
ain't
that we
it?
can probably teach.
Ooh. So in essence, it's always since life is class, you're always in session learning. So even if it's erroneous, some of the things that people said about and say, Byrd, you, do you believe that you are what these people say that you are? At the core of who you are, when there's nobody else around, when you don't have a mic in your hand, when the spotlight is not on you, who are you? And like you said, I had to unlearn myself and what people said about me and really get to the core of who I am, you know? And
Right.
that's so powerful. So good. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to wrap up before like the kids will probably wake up and be like, Mommy, it's 11 o'clock. You're not in bed yet. Um, but you know, I really want you to tell us a little bit, like in a couple of minutes, about um, Ugly Beautiful, the song, the experience, and how it's related to everything that we've been chatting about. And also tell us about Deliver Me, the single that is going to be released soon and very soon. Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us about Ugly Beautiful and then Deliver Me.
Certainly. So I'm fascinated in hindsight with how I've been able to express creatively based on the things that I've, and it's not even that I'm sitting down thinking about it. It's just this is what God has given me because I've proven it. And so Ugly Beautiful, just the title in and of itself, people ask me about that title all the time, especially radio stations when I interview with them, because it's so dichotomous. And that's what I wanted to happen. I wanted that effect. I wanted people to see the title and say, maybe I should listen to this.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So think about, you know what I mean? It's like sweet and sour chicken. It's like, and then you get a mouthful of it, and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Right.
I want some right now. So, Ugly Beautiful is a song that I penned shortly after my suicide attempt. And it's just the revelation that you come into, the sweet revelation that you come into, the transformative power of love. And it's a crossover for me because people think that just because I come from the church that I only talk about Jesus. I love him, absolutely. And at the end of the day, when I do talk about transformation, he is absolutely at the core of it. But
Right.
love in its purest form, whether it's from your mom, your dad, your sister, your significant other, will transform you without having to have a conversation, without you having to pay a registration fee. Love will cause you to want to change. It just has that effect, and that's what inspired Ugly Beautiful. And surprisingly enough, the songs that I release are not just songs; they end up becoming movements as well. And so, just call it, an epiphany. I just thought that it was important for us to create a space where people, like you say, feel safe to be able to speak. And when I got the inspiration for the Ugly Beautiful experience, the original anticipation was just a night of music and me talking about the inspiration. But I figured that there's so many other minds that could add to this conversation to make it so much more enriching. And I'm still on, surprisingly enough, 2 years later, I'm still high off that event. You're talking about a room full of broken people speaking to each other's brokenness and healing each other in the process. It was and still is one of the most fascinating moments I've ever had in my entire life. And thank you for being a part of that. And when we bring it back, we bringing you back. Amen. Amen. But the Ugly Beautiful experience is
Of
something
course.
that kind of surprised. We've been in talks with California, Baltimore. We've been in talks with DC. Atlanta wants it. My father just asked me to bring it to the church. We've been in talks with
Wow,
Montreal,
that's
Canada.
huge.
So Ugly Beautiful, it's going to go on the road, and I'm trying to do it in September. My team is like, it's too short notice. I said, people are hungry. You know what I mean? If the speakers are ready, and I know that they are, we can get it going. But when you see the formal announcement, I know you're probably going to go crazy on the support of it and just promoting it. But yeah, and then Deliver Me comes out August 3rd. And that's another song. I wanted to write an anthem that gives people who have felt unheard the power to be able to cry out and ask for help. That's the get people to admit that they have a problem and to get them to a place where they can remove pride out of the equation and say, deliver me. I really am not doing good with this. You know what I mean? Imagine if Demi was a young lady, if she had people around her
Lovato.
who were sensitive. hearing her saying, "I'm tired. I don't want to be the Demi Lovato that everybody else sees. I just want to be. Could you just pause for a second and listen to me?" And that's where Deliver Me comes from. It's gonna, I believe it's really gonna do a world of good for a lot of people. So August 3rd.
Awesome, awesome. That
Yeah.
sounds like the anthem for it being okay not to be okay.
Aha.
Because, you know, especially for people like you who are performers, it's almost like people expect for you to perform when you're not on stage.
Right.
You always have to have this face on. It's like, all the world's a stage, yes, but, you know, it's okay to not be okay. You don't have to be okay
Yeah.
for the masses. You don't have to be okay for the people around you. At some point, we need to just, okay, I'm a hot mess. I know that I'm a hot mess. How can we get through this?
Yeah.
Or give me 5 minutes in my hot messedness,
Right.
you know, and, you know, let me just understand what it's like to be in this space and then come up with a solution on how I can
Yeah.
get out of it. So I'm really excited about August 3rd. August 3rd is a
Oh yeah.
Friday. Yes, yes. So definitely check all what do they say? All places where quality music is, whatever.
All
Everywhere.
places where
iTunes,
digitally
all of
music
that.
is
Check it
sold.
out. Yes, clearly music is not like, yeah, that's your reading. Um, but definitely check out Deliver Me. In the meantime, in between time, you can definitely follow Andre Byrd, official Andre Byrd on Twitter. Are you on Twitter? Yeah.
I am not.
Okay. All right. So definitely
Crazy. I'm a
Instagram
bird.
and
I'm on
Facebook.
Twitter.
Uh, so official Andre Byrd, also Phoenix Captured. If you want to see him do his model thing, you know.
Hey.
And he also has a catalog of music that's already on iTunes and everything else. My personal favorite is Linger with Melissa Dawn, who's a sister of mine. Ugly Beautiful, definitely download it. It is an awesome piece of music, and it's just like, wow, it'll make you look at things like a lot differently. And I'm not just saying that because he's on Late Night Latte. But definitely support everything that Andre Byrd is doing, and that's a lot. But thank you so much for coming on the show and being candid and sharing your wealth of knowledge. It's always, what does Nikki say? It's a celebration every time we link up. It's always
Right.
amazing when we link. So thank you so much for
Thank
tuning
you.
in. I mean, not tuning in, but being on the show and having fun.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So any final words for the masses before we depart?
I'm just going to reiterate what you said. You're not okay, and that's okay. And we have tools to be able to help you get to an okay. But it's okay to be in the season of not okay. You'll be all right. I promise. Yeah.
That's a good place to end. Thank you so much, bro. I
Thank
appreciate you.
you.
Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. There are a couple people who commented. Kendra, my god sister, love you. You're always there. Love you, love you. Stephanie from St. Albans, thank you so much for tuning in. And I know that a lot of people tuned in to support Andre Byrd. You have a wide following, a large following. So thank you, everyone who tuned in. For those of you who have not already followed the That's Dr. Tay pages on Instagram and Facebook, as well as Twitter, please do so. Follow Andre Byrd and just be part of the conversation. Be part of the conversation. July is Minority Mental Health Month, but this is definitely a conversation that needs to be had for months and years to come. So that's it. Signing off. Make sure that you tune in next week for another episode of Late Night Latte. We're going to be talking about trauma and PTSD. So I have an extra special guest. She has a huge story to tell, and I look forward to seeing all of you tune in next Tuesday at 10. Thank you, bro. Have a
Bye,
good night.
guys.
Bye, everybody.